This
Before we
story
get
was sent
into
to me by
today's
one of
story,
my subscribers,
make sure to
Daniel,
hit that like
and
button
I
on
wanted to
this
share it
video
on the
so
channel.
we can keep bringing you more.
I was
Subscribe if
visiting
you
my
haven't
grandfather
already,
for
and
a
drop
family
a comment
cookout when
below
I
to
was
share your
around
thoughts
9 years
or your
old.
own experiences.
This took place
Your
so long
support is
ago
what
that
keeps
some
these
details are
stories
fuzzy,
coming.
but I'll try
There
my
was
best.
this old guy
My
who
grandfather
lived with
lives
his
a
wife
few
and
states
dog
away,
in a
about a
big
2-hour
detached
drive
house
from our home.
just a few houses
My father and I
down the
drove up,
street from
saw
where I
our
grew
family,
up.
and had
He
a really
was
great
a bit
time.
of a shut-in,
For
and
a bit
I
of
never saw
background,
him
my
talking to
grandpa
anyone.
lives in a
The
very
only
small
reason
town.
he
I
ever
believe
left
it's
his
actually
house was
considered
to
a
walk
village.
his dog.
It's
We
so
lived on the
small
same
that
street
in
everyone
peace
knows
for the
one
longest
another.
time.
And
My father
although
and
he
his brothers
seemed
all grew up
antisocial,
there and are
everything
very
appeared
familiar
normal.
with the area.
Then one day, things
Once the gathering was
started to
over
go
and we were ready to
downhill.
head home,
People
we
began
stopped at
to
a local
notice how
gas
the
station
car
to
belonging
fuel
to
up
his
for the
wife
long
was
drive.
no longer in
As
the driveway.
we walked in to get some
Later,
beverages
it was
and snacks for
confirmed
the
that
road,
she had
I
divorced him
immediately
and
noticed
moved away.
a man walking out.
This was only
I still
discovered
remember
because her
exactly
former
what he
colleague
looked like.
happened to bump
He was about
into a neighbor.
5'10",
It
the
actually
same
took
height as
about
my
2
dad,
weeks for
had
people to
shaggy
realize she
hair
was
and a
gone
5
for
o'clock
good.
shadow.
We
and
were
was
sad
wearing
for
a
him,
white
but
tank
marriages
top,
fall
black
apart,
basketball
and he
shorts,
seemed to
and
be
bright
acting like
red
his usual
sneakers.
self. So
My
no
dad and I
alarms were
walked
raised.
past him into the
One
gas
morning,
station.
sometime
I
later,
noticed
I
a
left my
display
house
with
at the
light-up
usual time
fidget
to catch the
spinners
school
near
bus.
the register.
Our street was
This was
normally
during
very
the
quiet,
height of the
but
fidget
on
spinner
this
craze.
particular morning,
It was only
things
$3.
were different.
So I asked
A
my
few
dad if I
neighbors
could
were
have
standing
one.
outside,
Trying
and my
to teach
parents
me the
said
principle
something was
of
wrong
working
with
for
the
the
old
things
guy
I
at
wanted.
the end of the street.
He told me that
Everyone
if I went out
seemed
to
worried
the car and
because
cleaned out
he
old
had
trash,
apparently
a
gotten
few
into an
empty water
argument with
bottles and
someone
candy
while
wrappers,
walking his dog.
he would get me one.
People were shocked
It was a
he
quick
was even
task,
speaking,
so I jumped
since
on the
he
offer
hadn't talked to
and
anyone
agreed to
in
go
years.
clean the car while
Then,
he
when he
grabbed our
suddenly
snacks.
started screaming,
As soon as
everyone
I
came
stepped
out of their
outside and the
houses to
door
see what was
closed behind
happening.
me, a
I
navy
wanted to
blue
stay and
minivan
watch, but
pulled
my
up,
parents told me
driven
to
by
go
the
to
same
school.
man I had
All
seen
day,
on our
I
way
thought about
in.
it from time to
He
time.
stopped right
I
in
wasn't
front of me
obsessed,
with his
but
window
I was
rolled
curious
down.
whether he had
I
been
assumed at first
arrested
that
or
he had
taken
stopped
away.
to let me
I
cross
was
the
eager
little
to
driveway
hear
to
what
get
had
to my
happened
car.
when I got home,
Wanting to be
but that
polite,
eagerness
I waved him
fills
along,
me with
indicating
shame
that
now,
he could go
because
first.
what I returned
He
to
then
was
used his
not
pointer finger
entertaining
to
at
gesture
all.
toward me.
When I got off the
telling me
bus,
to
I
come
saw that the
to
whole
him.
street had been
Being
blocked off.
young and wanting to
Police
assume
cars
the best,
were everywhere,
I thought he
and
was
even
still
a
just
SWAT
waving me
team was on the
across.
scene.
I said
had
out
no
loud,
idea
"Oh
what was
no,
happening.
it's okay.
So
You can
I
go
rushed
ahead,"
to the house
and waved
where
him
my
along
parents
once
explained
more.
that the old guy had
That's
tried to
when he
destroy
said,
the entire
"No,
street in
come
some
here,"
kind of manic
and began
episode.
opening his
He
car
had
door.
flooded his
I
basement with
realized
gas
with a
and
jolt
built
of
an
cold
improvised
fear that
bomb
he
in
was
his
trying
garden
to get me
shed.
to go
It was
into his
essentially a
car.
pile of
I
propane
panicked
gas
and
tanks
screamed
tied
something along the
together
lines of,
with a
"Heck
timer,
no,"
clock,
then
and
immediately
toaster
turned
serving
and
as the
ran back
fuse
inside the
mechanism
gas
for both
station.
the bomb
I grew
and the
even
basement.
more panicked
The
once
whole
I was
thing
back
was rigged
inside.
to explode
My
between
father had
7
been up
and
front
8
by the
in the
register
morning,
when I
and
walked
he had
out,
also
but
placed
now
a
he
smaller
was
device
nowhere to be
inside
seen.
the
I
recycling bin of
screamed
the
for him
neighbor's
at
next
the top
door.
of my lungs,
Before
gaining
triggering the
attention
bomb,
of
he
everyone
wrecked
in
the
the store.
interior of his house,
My dad came running
smashing
from
and
the back
breaking
where the
everything,
drink coolers
and then
were,
carried on
and
the
asked me
destruction
what
in
was
his
wrong.
garage.
I explained the
That
situation to
noise
him
is what
between
got him
sobs
caught.
as I was
A
so
neighbor
shaken up
became
that I had started
suspicious,
to cry.
looked through the garage
The man
window
at the
and
register
noticed the
called the
strong
police.
smell of gasoline.
They eventually showed up
He
and
broke
had
the
me give a
door,
description
discovered the
of
mess,
man
and
his vehicle,
confronted the old
as
man.
well as an official statement.
That was the argument everyone had heard
Coincidentally,
earlier.
the police officer I
Afterward,
spoke to
the neighbor
used to be
immediately
my
called the
father's
police.
babysitter
At
when
the
he
very
was a kid.
same time,
So
my
he was
parents
very
were
nice
scolding
and
me to
patient with me.
hurry to school. Our
Thankfully,
neighbor was actually
they ended
trying
up
to
finding the guy
activate the
and arrested
explosives
him.
and
Not
blow
for
up
the
the
attempted
entire
kidnapping,
street.
but
The
because
bomb
he had
squad
been
later
cooking
said it
meth
was a
in his
miracle
house.
the device did
I'm
not
not sure
detonate.
what happened as
It
far
was
as a
well
trial
put together,
or jail time,
with the only weak
because we never
parts
got an
being the
update on
timer
the guy
and
beyond
detonator.
that.
If the old
This
man had
happened
been more
quite a long
careful
time
with those
ago,
pieces,
and we
I
still
would not be
sometimes
here to
stop at
tell
that
the
gas
story.
station when coming
The
back
police
from my
arrived
grandfather's
not
house.
long after I left
To
for
this day,
school. They
I get
entered the home
anxious
and arrested
whenever I
him
go
before
inside.
he could fix the mistakes and
Thank you to
detonate the
Daniel
device.
for sending this
For a
chilling
while,
story.
it looked like we
If you
might
have a
have to
story,
stay in a
send it in
hotel
and it might be
overnight.
featured next.
But the bomb squad
I was
removed the
outside with my
explosives
dog,
about an
Danny,
hour
before
after
her
I
dinner this
returned
evening.
home.
It was
Once
around
the
9
police trucks
p.m.,
left,
and we
we
are
were
staying at
allowed
an
back
RV
into our
park in the
houses.
Arizona
desert.
After his arrest,
an
the
empty
man was
fields to the
declared
north of the
unfit
park.
to stand
Over the
trial
past
and was
couple of
sent
years,
directly
I've
from
been
court
hearing
to a
this weird
psychiatric hospital,
whirring
where he
sound
has
out in the desert
remained
that's
ever
hard to
since.
place.
From what
It
I
sounds
understand,
synthetic,
he is
not like
very
anything an
unlikely
animal
to
or an
ever be
insect would make.
discharged,
It
as his
moves
condition
around,
has
so it's
not
not a
improved and
generator.
he still
It has
harbors
also
a
followed
deep
me
hatred
between
of the
different
world.
campgrounds, almost like a
From the
hitchhiker.
ages of around 6
As I was sitting
to
outside
11,
waiting for my dog to
family
finish,
and I
that
lived in a
whirring
very
noise
rough
started up in the
neighborhood.
distance.
One night,
It sounded like it was
just my
coming from that
mom,
empty
myself,
field to the
and my
north.
2 siblings at
I was
home.
immediately
My dad
uneasy.
used to drive
It
trucks
was the
for a
first
living,
time I
which
had
meant he was
ever heard
away
it
a
in
lot.
town.
So most of the
In
time,
fact,
it was
I
just our
hadn't heard it
mom
in
taking care
weeks,
of us.
but as soon
That
as I
night,
did,
around
I
midnight,
felt like it had
someone
found
started
me.
ringing our apartment's
I was
buzzer.
more right than I thought.
My mom woke up and
Unfortunately,
went to
the
the little
noise stopped
intercom
after
to
about
ask who
5
it
to 10
was,
minutes,
but no
and I
one
brought Danny
answered.
back in to feed her.
She figured it was
I then
kids
decided
playing
to
ding
take her
dong
for a
ditch,
short
so
walk,
instead of
leaving
being
the park.
scared, she was
We
just
took a
annoyed
left,
and
down
went
to
back
the
to
corner,
bed.
then turned left again.
About 30 minutes later,
That street
someone
runs along
buzzed
the
again.
back side of the field
Mom
the
got
sound
up,
was coming
looked
from,
through the side
about a
window
quarter
to
mile
see if
from
she
the
could
camper.
spot anyone,
There
but
wasn't
saw
much
nothing.
moonlight, so my flashlight
That's when
provided
she
most of our
started
light.
to get nervous.
The field was on our
she
left,
went back
just
to the
empty
bedroom,
desert.
grabbed
To our
my
right
dad's
was
gun,
another
and
street
sat
about
in the living
half a
room in
mile
the
down.
dark,
We were
waiting
maybe
for someone
a
to try
third
to break
of the way
in.
there when Danny stopped
After what
dead
felt
in
like
her
forever,
tracks.
the
She turned
buzzer
to face
rang
the
again.
left side of the road.
This
her
time,
ears
my
up,
mom said she
facing that
calmly
field.
explained that if they
I
kept
pointed the
harassing
flashlight in
us,
that direction,
she would call the
expecting
cops,
to see a
and if they tried to
coyote or
break
a
in,
wildcat.
she would shoot them.
Instead,
There
what
was no
walked out of
response.
the bushes
She
next
went
to
back
the road
to the window,
looked at
and
first
that time
like a
she saw
man
3
stumbling
men
up the
outside.
road on 2
Their
feet,
faces were
almost drunk.
covered, and they were
I
staring
almost
right up at her
immediately
window.
noticed that
She rushed to
something
call the
was
police,
off.
while me and
That
my
was not a
siblings were
man.
asleep in our bedroom.
It had no clothes.
No one tried to
no
break in
shoes,
right away,
and also
but my
no
mom had to
head.
wait an
It was
hour
still
for the cops to
stumbling
finally
forward,
arrive.
swaying its
When they
arms in a
did,
strange
they buzzed
way,
our buzzer,
almost like
and
someone
she
trying
panicked,
to
thinking
walk
it was the
through
masked
deep
men
snow to
again.
maintain their balance.
Thankfully,
Its
it was the
skin
police.
looked deep brown
She let
and
them
shiny,
in, and they
almost
searched
like it
the
had been
outside of the building
rotisserie,
to make sure
but
no
with
one was
dark
hanging
patches
around.
as if it had
After
been
their
burned.
search, they told
That
my mom they
description
had
is
found a
fitting
piece of barbed
because
wire
even though it
about
had
4 feet
human-like
long,
legs and
lying
arms,
next to the front door.
its torso
They asked
looked
if it was
closer
hers.
to a chicken's
She said
or a
no
turkey's,
and asked why.
but sort of
The
upside
cop
down.
explained that it
It's
might
not
have
an exact
belonged
description,
to whoever
but it's
was
the closest
knocking.
I have.
Mom asked if they
I
thought
had
the men
trouble
planned on
processing
using it,
what I was
but the
even
officer said there
seeing.
was no way to know.
Mid-stride,
To
it
this
put
day,
one leg
my
forward
mom is
awkwardly,
convinced
then
they were
bent
planning to
over at the
torture us.
waist at a 90-degree
What the
angle,
police did
spreading its
confirm
arms in a
was that she was
theatrical
very
bow
smart
about
not to
15
open the
to 20
door
feet away.
because it could have cost
It was
her life.
completely
They
silent
promised
the
to
whole
patrol
time.
the neighborhood until
I
morning
didn't hear it
and
step on
conduct
the
a full
ground or brush
investigation
against the
once
bushes.
daylight came.
Audibly, it might as
Later
well
that
not have
morning,
been there.
after my
I
siblings
don't
and I
remember
went to
my
school,
dog making a
the
sound
police
either.
called back to talk to
I
my mom.
immediately started
They told her that
screaming
during their
involuntarily
search,
and
they
at the
had
top of
found
my lungs.
footprints
The
leading
screams
around
were
to the
out
back of
before
the
I
house,
even knew
right
I was
up
going
to
to
my
scream.
bedroom window.
This thing didn't
Our
turn
apartment was on
towards
the
me.
second
It
floor,
didn't even
but it would have
flinch.
been
It
easy for
remained
someone with a
frozen
ladder
in
to
its
reach.
bow.
They
I
also
turned
found
and started
marks on the window
sprinting down
frame
the
where
street,
someone had
still
tried to
screaming
pry it open but
uncontrollably,
failed.
turning back with
My
the
mom
flashlight
always
every few
suspected
steps
one
to
of our
make sure it wasn't
neighbors.
following
He would
me.
stare at her
Eventually,
in a
I lost
very
sight of it,
creepy
but I
way
kept
whenever they
looking
crossed
back the
paths,
whole way.
and he knew
I didn't stop
exactly
running
when my
until
dad
I got
was
to the
gone
next
because he
intersection where I was
recognized his
finally
truck.
able to stop screaming.
That night was the final
I
straw.
have never
As soon
in
as my
my
dad came
life
home, she
been
gave him an
terrified
ultimatum.
to the point of
Either find
screaming
us somewhere else to
uncontrollably
live,
like that.
or she was leaving with
This
the kids.
experience was
Within
completely
6 months,
outside
we
my
were
frame
living
of
in a new
reference.
home, and I
I think I
celebrated
just
my
lost
12th birthday
control.
in a place where
There
she
was no
finally
way I was
felt
going back
safe.
past it,
No
so we
longer
had to
in a
go the long
neighborhood
way
where she
around.
had to sleep
My
with one eye
anxiety was at
open.
an 11
Thanks
the
for
whole way
around
back.
till the end.
I was
If you
constantly
enjoyed the
checking
story,
in all
don't
directions
forget
with
to
the
give the
flashlight to
video a
make sure
like
that thing
and leave
didn't
a comment
sneak up
with your
on me.
thoughts. And if you
We had to
haven't
walk
already,
along 2
hit
more
that
streets to
subscribe
get back
button
to the
and
trailer,
turn on
and
notifications
it was
so
the
you never
longest
miss
walk of
a
my
terrifying
life.
tale.
I have
See you in the
no
next
idea
one.
what to make of this. It seems like it came from roughly where I heard the whirring noise. It definitely came from that same field, almost like it came out to meet me and introduce itself, like the bow was for that. I'm terrified by the possibilities this suggests. Danny saw it first, and I really wish she hadn't. It would have been easy to write this off as a hallucination otherwise, and I would probably prefer that. But it got even weirder. By the time I hit the next street after I started running, my flashlight beam turned pink. It's normally white, and I assumed I had messed it up while running, so I said to heck with it and kept walking quickly. That's when I started noticing the street lights on the way back also pink. I was too busy trying to keep an eye out to process it at the time, but thinking back, it was weird. When I got back to the street the RV is parked on and turned left, I noticed the moon. It too was pink. In fact, every light source I could see was now pink. I started really freaking out. My first thought was that I had been abducted and wasn't really experiencing what I thought I was, a simulation or screen memory with messed up settings. I got back to the camper, got inside, and called a friend over Signal, but the call kept messing up. No matter who I called, there was no audio for either of us, even though the calls were going through. My anxiety peaked higher than it's ever been. I just started saying none of this is real. Every light was still pink, even inside my trailer. It was surreal. I sent my friend my number and had her call directly. When the phone rang and I picked it up, she was there. I just completely lost it and started bawling. I've never in my life felt such relief to hear somebody else's voice. I really wish I hadn't seen that thing. Even if it's not what has been making that sound, there's no way I want to be associated with that noise now because it definitely feels connected. It came from that field. It's probably worth pointing out that we left the camper at around 9 and didn't get back until around 10:15. The path we took is usually a 30-minute walk at most, so that means I have about 45 minutes of completely unaccounted time. Thank you to Marcus for sending this profoundly unsettling story. If you have a story, send it in and it might be featured next.
Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.